When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Grease Comms YouTube channel. Today's video, we are going to be talking about Davos in Winds of Winter. And again, thank you for everybody who sent me comments or questions and topics to talk about in today's video. We're doing that how we've been doing it in the past. And so, yeah, I also want to say thank you for the people that decided to send their questions on Instagram to me on my stories. It just makes it much easier for me. I've talked about this in the past Winds of Winter videos. It's just very difficult to do them with a community post because YouTube, you know, it might have your comments showing one day and then the next day I go to look and to take all my notes to get everything ready to go and it's not there. And so I have to then try and go to YouTube Studio and hopefully your comment may show up on there, it may not, and then I'll see that it's on there 2 days later and it was there the whole time. So yeah, YouTube, which is very frustrating when it comes to that point of it. But yeah, so we're going to try to get through all of your comments, your topics in today. And let's just, before we get into it, if you guys, again, want to learn more about A Song of Ice and Fire, consider subscribing. You know, we can learn more about this and get ready for Winds of Winter if we hopefully get it. But let's do some background information for Davos first before we really jump into everything going on in Winds of Winter. So Davos, again, is going to Skagos because he wants to bring back Rickon to get Wyron Manderly to go with Stannis, because Wyron Manderly's whole thing is he wants a Stark to be the ruler of the North, which makes a lot of sense. So if you bring Rickon back, you kind of have someone that the whole North can rally behind. Again, everybody in the North does not know where Bran is, right? Jon is dead at this point. Arya is a fake Arya, and she's in Braavos right now. Sansa is nowhere to be found, right? She's very hidden right now. She's in the Vale. Robb is dead as well. So there isn't really that Stark to rally behind at this moment, and that's what Wyron Manderly is going to use so we can unite the North. And so Davos is tasked with this mission that is very difficult. Skagos is a very mysterious island. We got a lot of that background in Sam 2, which I just got done doing a review of. I believe it was yesterday when this video came out. So it's a very dangerous island. We don't know a ton about it. We know there's kind of some cannibalism maybe going on there. There's some unicorns, a lot of, you know, wild things going on there. And so what's going to end up happening here is that Davos is going to have to do this rescue mission. And that's where we're going to kind of pick up on the questions, the topics, but will he get out of there alive? Will he rescue Rickon? Will he find Rickon, but it'll all be for naught? Who knows? So let's get into some of the background and questions. JT Maz asks, Davos is one of my favorite characters. He isn't great because of titles, but integrity. And yeah, I think something that I look at specifically with two characters being Davos and Catelyn, they are two characters that feel like almost the most human, right? Where Davos is a character that I think a lot of us can resonate the most with because he's someone that, a big lord, you know, he is someone that is more common born and has to, you know, work his way up, trying to make a living and get a better life for his children, one of his main goals. So he feels a lot like, you know, a normal character. He feels like someone you can really get behind. And so, yeah, I think he's a fan favorite for a lot of those reasons. But yeah. So moving on, we have the kind of the Skagos plot. And Avery, Gummersell, you actually had two questions, but they're kind of somewhat the same. So I kind of got what you were meaning and just kind of combined them. But if Rickon isn't already dead, do you think he'll die on this journey with Davos? So I think for me personally, Rickon is not dead. The problem here is like, if Rickon was already dead, why send Davos on this mission, right? Because if we spend a bunch of time, because again, there's another question that we're going to have here. It's actually the next question from Leo. But if we go to Skagos and Rickon's already dead and nothing really comes out of this, Davos just maybe escapes with his life and then goes back to the North, it's going to feel kind of odd. It's going to feel like, okay, this kind of felt like George just cleaning up maybe a plot hole because Rickon is still alive. Like, I just feel like if that was the case, again, this is me changing my opinion, right? Because when I first got in this community, I thought Rickon was going to die as well. Like, I didn't think he was going to be a big part of the story. And so the community, you guys have changed my opinion on that. And so for me personally, I don't think it would make the most amount of sense for Davos to come all this way and then find out that Rickon is just dead. Now, Rickon dying during the journey with Davos could actually make a lot more sense to me. It could actually be something that really impacts Davos's character as well, because, you know, if Rickon, who is still a young kid, dies with Davos, and maybe Davos blames himself or something like that happens, and we know how Davos is with children, especially with like someone like Shireen and also Edric, that could really deeply impact his character and change him. So that would make a lot of sense on the actual impact for Davos. And it'd be even more interesting if Davos started to kind of have some sort of connection with Rickon, and that would be really tragic, right? So I would not shy away from George doing something like that. But I do think Rickon will live, but I think that's an interesting point as well, as if he died on the journey with Davos. But that'll kind of lead us into Leo's question, because I kind of already answered it a little bit, but do you think we'll see Davos find Rickon on Skagos from a POV, or will they just turn up later? So I really hate this idea of them just turning up later, because we have this whole idea that it's foreshadowed that Davos is going to Skagos and all this, and he just kind of disappears from Dance, right? He just doesn't really come back. I think it would feel pretty cheap to me if George just gave us, oh, later on, maybe through like a John POV, Davos and Rickon just show up. That would feel very cheap to me. I know we're trying to condense the story a lot, but you need at least one chapter with Rickon and Davos. You need at least one. Like, it can be, we can cut to Davos and he's been looking for Rickon for a while, and we have this chapter's one where he actually finds Rickon. And then maybe you have, like, it's already planned how they were going to escape. And so maybe you could have one really long chapter where it's Rickon and Davos, like, Davos finds him and then they have their escape plan. And then you can cut to him later when they come back into the story. Maybe you could do that. I still think you need at least 2 Davos chapters. I think realistically, if George wanted us to give this the full explanation of Rickon and Skagos, it would probably be 3 chapters, but I could see it being, I think the best condensed version would be probably 2 chapters. So yeah, I think it will be through his POVs. I really dislike the idea of just, we come back into the story and Davos has Rickon. I really dislike that idea, but it maybe could happen. I just hope not. Mystery Junkie 9808 says there's a 100% chance Rickon will bite Davos's fingers/hands when he goes to get them. Very possible. Rickon, again, we know is a wild child. He's gone to Skagos, which is going to maybe even amplify that even more. And so a lot of Davos's journey could be about trying to get Rickon to become back to a normal kid once again in that journey. And again, if we do see Rickon dying, it could be because Rickon himself, because he's too wild, he's too maybe aggressive, he's almost become animalistic. He is someone that does something stupid and Davos can't tame him, and he gets himself killed. And that's how you fit in that whole idea that Davos failed. He couldn't, protect Rickon. He couldn't bring him back to being kind of a normal kid, and that's why he dies. So there's a lot that George could play on with those 2 characters to me, and I definitely think, kind of what you're alluding to, Mystery, definitely could be something there. Igor Briskin 7746 asks, mission to Skagos. Is Rickon back by the time the sample chapters are happening? How hard will he be to find? How did Asha get there? In sample chapter, Stannis says that he might fake his death. Davos' reaction. So a really loaded question, but I like a lot of the ideas that you present here. So let's kind of go by this from the beginning to the end. So will he be back by the sample chapters? No, I don't think so, right? Because how is Davos going to just immediately find Rickon? I don't think that's going to happen, right? I think it's going to take a little bit of time for Davos to figure that out, as well as then getting him off the island, any issues he may run into while on Skagos. And then also, if you think about him traversing back through the north at like really bad conditions that are going on right now, I don't think so, no, right? I think I see the best timeline for Davos coming back into the story is going to be, like, say, after Stannis takes Winterfell, if he does. Or say Jon takes Winterfell after that. Maybe Stannis loses, which I don't think is going to happen, but maybe Jon's the one that takes it. I think Davos, the perfect time to bring him back into the story is after that conflict has kind of resolved itself a bit. Because if Davos comes in like mid-battle or something like that, it's going to be weird on that timing. So to me, I think personally the safest option is he just comes back into the story after Winterfell has been taken. Again, towards I would say more like the back half or the middle to back half of Winds of Winter, because again, I personally think, you spend 2-3 chapters in Skagos or just trying to find Rickon, getting him out, and I think that makes a lot of sense for me. How hard, so I already talked about this, but how hard will it be to find? Again, Davos has almost no information as to where to find him, so it could take quite a little bit. Or how did Osha get there? I really don't know, right? Maybe Osha just thought this was the safest option. Maybe they were on a boat and they just crash landed in Skagos. Again, we see that this is almost a possibility when Sam is going by there, so maybe that could have happened. Yeah, I'm not sure there on that. In the sample chapters, Stannis says that he might fake his death. Davos' reaction, I think Davos will be quite heartbroken by this, right? If this news does end up reaching him, that, you know, he will see, like, what is his purpose now, right? Like, how his whole, again, purpose of finding Rickon is for Stannis' cause. How would that maybe change what he's doing? Again, Stannis is someone that Davos owes everything to. What would Davos's purpose be in the story? That's something we're going to see with Jon now. Is like, Jon is going to have to figure out what his purpose is again, right? His purpose before was preparing the world and the Night's Watch for this threat of the others, but then he's betrayed. Now what is his purpose, right? He failed at his first purpose. He was, not only that, he was killed for it. So that's something I think Davos is going to kind of try to struggle through. JGR7487 asks, will he even bring Rickon from Skagos, or he'll be already too wild to be brought? Will the Onion Knight even survive half of Winds? So we have a lot of questions and comments about the fate of Davos. So I'll talk about the second half a little bit later, but will he even bring Rickon from Skagos, or he'll be already too wild to be brought? So I think Davos is going to try. And I think the two will be together for a little while. I think if Rickon is not brought back, it's going to be because Rickon was just too difficult to handle. I personally think that Rickon does come back with Davos. And I think for the time being, Rickon could be used as someone that the North kind of just rallies around, and they use him, right? He is a legit Stark. You don't have to play on, Jon being a bastard or whatnot. And I think for the time being, when Rickon re-enters the story, it'll kind of be like, oh, Jon Snow, Wyman Manderly, a lot of their northern coalitions, they'll kind of be ruling over him, like the Lord Declarants. If we look at like the Vale, right? If we look at kind of that whole situation, where we have the Waynwoods, the Royces, all these different factions trying to basically be in control of the Vale over Robin until he comes of age. That's something I think you can see with the North. And I think Jon will kind of be your figurehead, where he's this character that, is at this point, from what we know, Ned Stark's bastard son. He's someone that has a lot of experience. I think he's someone that definitely could be in a position like that. And then he's going to gain more, right? So as they come south, maybe they come to Moat Cailin, they come to the Neck. And so they come to that area, then you're going to possibly run into, Robb's will, right? We know Lady Mormont's going to be here. She had Robb's will, if it was a written down thing, which I think it was. Could be legitimizing Jon. Again, it's not fact or not fact. I know you guys really like to remind me on that. Personally, I just think it's Jon, but it could be somebody different. So you have that information there. Then Howland Reed, I think also, this is where he enters the story, telling who Jon actually is. And then I think that's where it changes, right? I think everyone sees by this time who Rickon is. He's not really fit to be king. We also will see Bran as well, probably at this point of the story as well. And Bran is not going to probably want to be king, or not king, but be the leader of the North at this time. So I don't think that's an option. And so I think they turn to Jon, who is now legitimized, right? He's been legitimized by Robb as the heir. He also is actually a full Stark and the rightful king, given that young Griff is not actually Rhaegar's son, the king of Westeros, because he's a Targaryen. So all of this I think is going to culminate with that idea that Rickon for a while will kind of just be someone that is being used to rally people around, but then Jon will kind of take that mantle, I think. But this will get us to kind of the aftermath of the Northern plot. So Otto WW asks, I wonder if there will be a time where Davos decides to leave Stannis and go back to his wife, just to find their house burned down and his family either gone or dead because of the war. Also, if he leaves, would his son go with him? So, very interesting question, because I don't think this is ever going to come up, just based on the fact that I think if Davos and Stannis have one last meeting, and I'm also going to kind of put this with a Vishrut's comment that he has a bit. I had him a little bit lower. I had this comment a little bit lower down because it's go into the death thing. But he asked, will we ever see Stannis again? And so for me personally, I like to see, in a perfect world, I think we see Davos and Stannis have one last interaction, and then Davos leaves. Stannis gives his life, and that's kind of how that whole plot ends up. But I think for me personally, I don't think it's going to be a situation in which Davos willingly leaves Stannis to go home. I think Davos is now invested, right? I think Davos is invested in the war with the others, especially because I think Stannis is going to give his life defending against that. So Davos is going to see it as his mission to complete Stannis's work. And that's going to be, I think, Stannis's order as well to him. That could be a really big reason as to why he again starts maybe serving Jon instead, advising him. And so, I thought about this when I read your question for the first time. Wouldn't a really dark and bittersweet ending, not even bittersweet, just a dark ending to end out the story, is to show Davos going home. And, his family is either dead and the war consumed them, and he almost has nothing left outside of maybe his son, right? That movie that we know is in the north. That would be a tremendously dark ending. Now, I don't think that's going to be it. I don't think the story would end with Davos in a POV, but it would be insane because it would really fill all the major themes that Davos has had, right? Because we have this idea of honor and love and duty and love and all that. And Davos is one of the biggest characters of that, right? He's put a lot of his children in harm's way, and maybe that's because some of them wanted to be involved, but still, right? He's been gone from his wife for a long time now, but it was because of duty, for honor's sake, to help Stannis win the throne. He helped elevate their position, giving his sons a better position and place in life, even though a lot of it didn't turn out well for some of them. But to come home, and it would feel a lot like Lord of the Rings, where our hobbits come back to the Shire, and it's been just completely destroyed almost. It would have a lot of that same ending. So I don't know if George would want to go down that route, but it would be a fascinating end. I really love that idea of putting that, what you just said, kind of at the end of the story. But yeah. But the next question is also very fascinating because would he leave with his son? Like, would his son go with him? And I think it's a yes or no question. It depends. If Stannis is still alive, if Mel is still prominent in the North at this point, which again, I think she, by the time Davos enters the story, might not be because of what she's going to do to bring back Jon. I think Davos' son would probably actually go with him. I could definitely see that being a possibility. We have another comment here from Matthew Stewart. After Stannis eventually dies, will Davos become an advisor to Jon in the North? So I talked about this a little bit already, but I do believe that's kind of where Davos is going, right? I think Stannis could, again, order Davos saying, hey, help out the North. We've got to, survive against this threat. And Jon is going to be that person. Davos and Jon have already had a bit of interaction, and we know that Stannis has that respect for Jon. I think it's the perfect move for Davos's character to go with someone like Jon. So I do believe that is the truth of it. All right, so let's get to the outcome for Davos. And a lot of people had this comment of, is he going to die? Is he going to live? So we're going to throw all these up here on the screen at the same time. But Vishrut, again, I mentioned him earlier. Is he going to cheat death again? Will he ever see Stannis again? We already answered the second part, but the first part, is there. Going to throw another one up here. A user NMH says, will he survive? Matthew James Hagen says, does he live? So again, I think Davos is one of the characters I see living through the entire story. He just gives me the vibe of surviving. He's just not going to be put in a lot of situations, in my opinion, where he's going to be doing, frontline combat. I think he's going to be fairly safe. I don't know who would be wanting to kill him. For me personally, I think Davos survives till the end. I could see him in a situation, similar to how we saw on the show. I think Davos, for the most part, had a decent arc of being someone maybe like a master of ships. I could see Davos being someone that maybe just doesn't want any of that. He wants out of the political game. He goes home. Maybe he gets a happy ending with his family. I don't like that ending, but, maybe it's something bittersweet like that. Or I like that the ending for Davos as a character, but I don't think it maybe will fit Game of Thrones the way George wants to end the whole story. But yeah, I do think he lives. I think he's one of the safer characters for me personally of who is actually going to live. Now, will that bite me in the ass if George kills him in the first half of Winds? Yes. Will I be extremely sad if he does? Yes. But the last thing I have to answer here is Noah Hook asks, what do you think his endgame is? Well, I just answered that, but I do think, again, where Davos is headed is, again, supporting Jon, being an advisor character there, and kind of just taking a similar role like with what he did with Stannis, but with Jon instead. And that's why I've always thought, like, Jon is a character that if George didn't make him a POV anymore, could make perfect sense, because Davos could kind of fill the role that we've kind of already seen Davos do, right? Being this character that's our insight into a kingly figure like a Jon or a Stannis. But thank you guys all for watching. I hope you guys enjoy this one. And again, if you are not subscribed to the channel, if you are not following the Instagram, I would really do so if you want to be involved in these. Again, I know a fan favorite one, again, always does well on the channel. You guys really like when I do these kind of videos. We're going to be doing Young Griff next week. So again, just make sure if you want to be involved with these that you're have access to commenting or asking questions on those. So thank you guys for all of you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.